The world can be a very lonely place if you've got HIV, and that's because society, when it comes across something it doesn't like or doesn't understand, or even worse, is afraid of, simply turns its back, shuns it, hopes it'll just go away. And so it is with HIV. Now, it's true that within the ranks of the NHS and the social services, there's a pocket industry which does provide a level of care and attention and medication, but it can only do so much. And at the end of the day, it's left to the unhappy individual to fend for themselves, often alone, often in silence, marginalised by the very society in which they are once free to move. Now, given that, wouldn't it be nice if there was somebody out there who cared, somebody who understood this sense of isolation and detachment and sheer hopelessness, a group of people perhaps who could restore dignity and a sense of self-worth, and at the same time educate the wider world, to teach us, you and me, that HIV is no longer the unforgiving behemoth so beloved of the headline writers. A group of people perhaps committed to providing support, both practical and emotional, for not only those affected by HIV, but also for their friends and their families. And the very good news is that such a group does exist. They're working in a seaside town in North Wales called Penmanmawr, and the home that they have built has been called by a former guest there as a jewel of a place. We know it rather more simply as Tyddyn, Bach. Tell me about the original vision for Tyddyn, Bach.
Tyddyn Bach was really set up with a view to supporting people and their individual needs rather than supporting patients. It was on a very sort of grassroots level. It was sort of, the idea was first mooted in 1995, and it was, in those days, if you were diagnosed, you were instantly a leper, especially within North Wales, with the small communities. And the idea of Tyddyn Bach was a sort of small oasis that people could come and remain themselves and be treated and supported as individual human beings, rather than shunted into the frightening environment of a hospice or a hospital, which in those days was almost impossible in view of the stigma that surrounded it. Its needs have changed with time. HIV antivirals have improved tremendously now, and whilst HIV is not the death sentence that it used to be by any manner of the imagination, to some degree for a lot of people it's a life sentence. There's still an enormous amount of stigma and prejudice about, and the emotional elements of living with HIV are really sort of not being dealt with today. So whilst its needs have changed, we are sort of keeping up with the needs of the people at sort of a grassroots level.
Tommy has HIV. Not too long ago, Tommy was in bits. The illness and the medication surrounding it had reduced him to immobility. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, Tommy had given up. He was going nowhere, and very quickly. Until he came across Tyddyn Bach. Tommy, in your own words, tell me something about the experience of being at Tyddyn Bach.
When I first found out about Tyddyn Bach, I actually refused to come because I thought I was coming to just some hospice or hospital thing, and they were going to take me into care instead. But then there was a change of mind, so I decided to come to Tyddyn Bach, and it was the best thing that I ever did, because it wasn't what I thought, what I had in mind, and I discovered that everybody there was very helpful, and everything like helpful, and the food was amazing, the atmosphere around the place, the mountains, the sea, and it's all like very therapeutic, the therapies that you that they've helped me a lot with my mobility.
Is it true that you thought you'd never actually walk again?
Well, when I became disabled, it was all due to side effects of HIV medication, and short after my first lot of medication that I took, it left me total disabled, and he said that I was never going to walk again. And that's the reason that they were going to put me into care. And then they offered me about coming to Respite. So I took the chance of coming to Respite, and it was the best thing I've ever done.
Okay, so who got you walking?
Manager, Mr. Philip Keaton-Smith. He's the manager from the Tyddyn Bach, and he was determined that realised a few movements that suddenly I was starting appearing on my legs, and he was determined, and he confiscated my wheelchair. Cruel enough, but it paid off. Yeah, so it was quite amazing what Philip did.
And is it true that you actually thought that you would have died if you hadn't come to Tyddyn Bach?
I would imagine that if I would have gone towards the direction of going into care, I would have no longer been here, no way. Because by then I gave up with myself and lost all my confidence, and thanks to Philip. He was the one that was determined and persuaded me and put me all the confidence that he gave me, and all the people around Tyddyn Bach, the cook and everybody, which is all volunteers are very nice people. You get on with anybody. You can be yourself here. Nobody rules you, and obviously, and everything's under control, and you can be yourself.
And you've also actually been a volunteer here, haven't you?
Yeah, well, when I started getting all my mobility, I thought it was time for me to pay back to Tyddyn Bach in a sort of way, because Philip, I say, helped me so much, and I've achieved so much that I'm no longer sat in a wheelchair. I can manage to move about. So I'm a bit more capable of doing bits. So rather than being sat watching telly like I did, the duration of the 3 years I spent in a wheelchair, get myself a bit more mobile, and it helps me everything with the condition of my walking.
It's kind of unfair, to ask you, but in a word, what would you say makes Tyddyn Bach special?
Special? Just the whole place, it's special. It's, like I said, the main special thing for me here has been Philip, obviously, because he's the only... No, it gets me sentimental, because honestly, if it wouldn't have not been Philip, I don't think I would have been here.
Back in the 1990s, HIV respite care homes sprang up all over the place, underpinned by a government responding ever so briefly to the scare stories. In time, the scare stories went away, but sadly, so did the government money. Tyddyn Bach alone was left standing, financed entirely by a very modest level of guest income and by voluntary contributions. And that's where we all come in. Tyddyn Bach is, in every sense of the word, a positive place. God bless Philip and all the staff. Please help keep this place funded. Not my words, but those of a former guest, and nobody could have put it better. Please help.